Hello, everyone. This week we are starting Unit 3, and Unit 3 is our Persuasive Research Essay unit. So, our objectives for this week are to distinguish a controversial issue from an informative or a pseudo argument, discuss the rhetorical challenges of reaching out to a skeptical or resistant audience, to describe the persuasive research paper goals and objectives, to identify a persuasive issue to explore in our papers, and to determine which issues are too controversial or not controversial enough, and to explore your issue by identifying different types of claims and rationale. So here are your assignments for week 9. So please watch and or read the supplementary instructor videos and PowerPoints as always. So for this unit, and this week, I am uploading a regular PowerPoint version, and I'm also uploading a YouTube video, so this video in which I am recording the PowerPoint. Read the overview of the persuasive research essay assignment as well as the assignment itself, please. Read in your top hat text, starting from writing persuasive research essays to the beginning of the chapter through logos audience-based reasoning. And then you have an optional reading, so watching the 2 TED Talk discussion videos that discuss persuasion and argumentative reasoning. So you'll see those posted under week 9 this week. Those are very interesting, and if any of you have watched TED Talk videos, or if you have not, I highly encourage you to watch those. They're very mentally stimulating. And your 2 assignments for this week are due Wednesday and Friday. They are discussing your issue and resistant audience. So this is a brainstorming activity to help you develop with your peers what kind of topics you all might like to discuss in your essays, which ones are too controversial, which ones are just controversial enough, what kind of resistant or skeptical audiences might you choose to try to persuade in this essay. And then the second type of assignment you have this week is the audience analysis. This is due Friday. And then finally, make sure your research topic is approved by me. So in your audience analysis, once you submit it, I will either approve or not approve your chosen research topic and the accompanying resistant or skeptical audience. So this is for your benefit so that you don't end up writing or sticking with a topic that is just not going to work out for this sort of essay. So even though this is a persuasive research essay and you do get to have, you are able to choose your own topic, there are certain constraints and limitations to it. So again, this is for your benefit. So please make sure you do get your topic approved by me. And if you do want your topic, you do want to brainstorm with me, please join me for office hours. I'm happy to set up a meeting this week or next week. So to discuss the persuasive research essay assignments, the purpose of the persuasive research essay, and I discussed this briefly in the email, is to focus on a controversial issue and write a multi-sided argument that attempts to persuade a resistant, also known as a highly skeptical audience, to consider accepting your claim about that issue. So a few key features about that statement I just read, that description of the essay. You're focusing on a controversial issue. You're writing a multi-sided argument. So you're going to be using response strategies, summarizing, rebuttal, concession, acknowledgement of the opposing views, perspectives. You want to create a multi-sided argument. You're persuading a resistant audience, which means you are identifying a resistant audience. And you are making an overall persuasive and definitive claim. And why are you writing a multi-sided argument rather than a simple research essay that supports your claim? Why even try to incorporate an argument that demonstrates you considering the opposing side's perspective? Why even bother doing that? because you are a member of a larger society that faces public policy, social issues, and society relies on this type of essay work, this type of dialogic argument, and I'll discuss that term later in the unit. So it relies on this type of dialogic argument in order to break down these issues and discuss them and determine our policies and what our values are. So essentially, through this dialogic argument, we are seeking common ground with our argument, with our audience. So by that we mean seeking common ground. We are attempting to understand the opposing audiences or the skeptical audience's perspective on the issue. So overall, your persuasive research essay will be about 5 to 7 double-spaced pages in Times New Roman 12-point font, please. So for the main objectives of this essay, you will explore multiple perspectives of a controversial issue. So that means your point of view and your opposing audience's point of view. You will summarize fairly your resistant audience's perspective on the controversial issue in your essay. Provide common ground between your view and the audience's view. So you will demonstrate showing in your essay that you have researched your audience's perspective. You know why they are resistant to this issue. You develop persuasive claims with reasons, warrants, and backing to attempt to persuade them to believe your side of the issue. You identify, evaluate, and incorporate credible research sources. So as far as research sources, I require that you include a minimum of 5 sources within this research essay, although I encourage you to use more. However, one of these sources must be a scholarly source, meaning the source can either be from a peer-reviewed journal, article, website, etc. But it must be considered a scholarly source of some form. This is to add further credibility and ethos to your argument. So to help us start differentiating between a controversial issue or topic, we have to first understand what is an issue. So we're going to differentiate between an information question and an issue question, because we have to first ask questions before we can even craft a statement of an argument, before we can even craft that main claim. So how to identify an issue versus an information question. You will examine your purpose in relationship to your audience. So for example, information questions, the audience hopes to gain new knowledge, information, or learn new material from someone else. So for example, this is the student-teacher relationship. The student hopes to learn new knowledge about a subject from the teacher. However, with an issue question, your audience needs to make up its mind or is weighing different points of view. So this might be a jury to judge relationship where the jury is weighing its mind on a certain topic and they're discussing things constantly. So you want to have audience in mind when you're discussing whether your claim in the topic you're considering is an actual issue, or if you're just trying to, in your essay, inform someone of a certain topic. You want to make sure whichever topic you choose, it is an actual issue. And here are some examples of issue versus information questions to help you start brainstorming. So what percentage of public schools in the US are failing? This is an information question. Why is it an information question? Because it's straightforward. It is asking for a specific set of information. It's not debatable. It's asking for the percentage of schools failing. Let's move on to the next one. What is the effect on children playing first-person shooter games? This is an issue question. Why? Let's think about audiences. There are many audiences here. There's teenagers, there's parents, there's researchers who have studied the effects of these games. All of them would probably have very different opinions and stances on this question. So that makes it an issue question and also makes it a controversial one. So that's why it's an issue question when we think about audience. On to the next one. Is genetically modified corn safe for human consumption? So this may be presented as either an information or an issue question. However, it's ultimately an issue question based on the audience. Different audiences, based on their knowledge of this, might provide different answers based on their knowledge of agriculture or farming, etc. And then should people get rid of their landlines and have only cell phones? This is again an issue question because it's an opinion. So genuine argument versus controversial issue versus pseudo argument. So this is us identifying again with relation to audience. How to determine what is a true argument and what is a false argument when you are crafting your essay. So this is also related to audience. You are going to be pursuing a controversial issue with a resistant audience. And I'll explain that once I explain these terms. So what is a genuine argument? A genuine argument is a rational argument that discusses an issue. It's a reasonable argument assuming the possibility of growth and change, where the author and audience may modify their views reasonably. So there's two stipulations to this. It has reasonable participants, usually a neutral audience, so we think of that audience scale. And two, it has potentially shareable assumptions. So the audience has potentially shareable assumptions. They're open to that common ground. Lacking either of these conditions, however, makes the argument a pseudo argument, a false argument, or not true. In a pseudo argument, this is the case of the committed believer or the fanatical, skeptical audience. They are so firmly committed to their own position that they can't hear anyone else's argument. They don't want to acknowledge that anyone else's argument exists despite the evidence that they present, despite how reasonable someone else's argument is, they refuse to accept it. And therefore, there's no way you can attempt to persuade them. Therefore, you cannot choose them as your audience for your controversial issue in this paper. So that's why you have to keep in mind what kind of skeptical audience you are going to choose. They also lack shareable assumptions, ideology, and opinion. So an example of this is the Christianity and creation versus scientific theories of evolution. These are two audiences in which you cannot try to persuade because they are so firmly committed to their beliefs that they won't change. They're committed believers, or they're very skeptical of the opposing side's opinions and beliefs. So they're very unlikely to be persuaded by your argument. So do not choose them as your audience. Another example is this, an example of opinion. So pizza is better than nachos because nachos simply taste better. This is an example of opinion, and it's an example of taste. Everyone has different preferences of taste due to their taste buds, correct? You can't change that, and therefore you cannot try to persuade someone based on opinion either. So that makes it a pseudo argument. So again, when you're thinking of audience and what kind of skeptical audience you want to choose, keep some of these thoughts in mind. So when brainstorming genuine arguments and controversial issues, you might want to start off with a simple activity like this. Think about issues that are somehow connected to your major or an academic interest. What kind of claims could you make? How controversial are these issues? Will people in your major disagree with you? Will they agree with you? Or would they have a neutral opinion? Who may disagree, who may agree, and who may be very resistant to your stance within your major or academic discipline? Think about some scholarly articles you read in your discipline, or maybe you're an art major. Think about some art that has been known to be controversial. So this is a good way to start helping you brainstorm some ideas. And then here we see the audience scale. So you saw this in your Unit 2 book. So remember, so for our Unit 2 paper, we wrote to a neutral audience. For our Unit 1 paper, we wrote to a supportive or believer audience. And for our Unit 3 paper, we are writing to a skeptical and resistant audience. This is our ideal audience for the Unit 3 essay. And as you see here, I wrote on the far ends of the scale, committed believer and the fanatical skeptics, who are too resistant and too extreme. These are the people you want to keep in mind. These are the people you do not want to appeal to when you are thinking of what skeptical audience you want to appeal to. You want to hit that sweet spot, sort of. Find that ideal skeptical audience to appeal to with your controversial issue in Unit 3 essay. And again, another activity for brainstorming issues to explore. Make an inventory of the communities to which you belong. Identify controversies within those communities, whether they're big controversies, small controversies, are they with religion, housing, etc. Which problematic issues do you not have a position on? Do you find yourself neutral? Could you find yourself having a position on it maybe in the future? Brainstorm a network, make a web of related issues stemming out from this issue. And when you're doing this, consider which group of readers will resist or be skeptical about these particular arguments. And how to narrow down issues. So when choosing issues, we're going to go through an example together in this PowerPoint. So here's an example. We have climate change or environmental issues. So this is an example of a large issue, an umbrella issue. What are the problems with this issue? First of all, it is currently too large. Second of all, it is too controversial. It probably has a very resistant audience. So thinking back to that scale, it is too extreme. It's probably either has really committed believers who either don't believe climate change is happening or too skeptical, fanatical skeptics. And those people refuse to believe climate change is occurring, and therefore there is no possible way you can attempt to persuade them in this essay. Therefore, we want to narrow down this topic choice as it's too large to tackle in a 5 to 7 page paper. So what are some topics under this umbrella issue of climate change and environmental issues that we can tackle for a 5 to 7 page paper? And that might be just controversial enough. So some examples are recycling, plastic straw use, vegan diets, flight shaming, air pollution, etc. And this way you might be able to find specific evidence and a specific skeptical enough audience for these issues. So other topics to brainstorm. You will be brainstorming ideas with your classmates within the discussion activity discussing your issue, but here's some ideas to get you all started. So anything involving sports. I had a few student writers in previous classes write about sports teams not getting fair enough pay. We also have had students write about environmental issues, animal activists, the consumerism culture, anything related to healthcare, cell phones, technology, parking. However, there are certain topics. So again, those two controversial topics you want to avoid. And remember, I have to approve your topics. So if you write about these, and I'm telling you right now, you will most likely not pass your essay. So please do not write about them. Abortion, marijuana, lowering the drinking age, gun control, and policy amendments. I know many of you would like to talk about these, but they are too controversial, and due to the audience, so again, those committed believer audiences, it's just not going to work out for a 5 to 7 page paper. But if you would like to talk to me about narrowing down your choices, I highly encourage you to do so. And then that ends our PowerPoint for this week. If you have any questions at all, as always, please feel free to email me or visit me during office hours.